Hugo, it's your host, Gabe Morales. Today we're going to discuss Calo, also known as Pachuco speak, which is a slang of Mexican Spanish that originated in the southwest United States about 100 years ago. It is the product of the Zoot-Suit Pachuco culture that has developed since then in many cities along the U.S.-Mexico border in the southwest United States and indeed across the entire United States with increasing migration. It is a dialect that is constantly developing. For instance, when I was growing up, I rarely heard the term way, which is literally an ox, or to be more specific, a dumb ox. But by the 1990s, I started to hear it more and more in barrios to mean dude. And it seems like some Mexicanos or Mexican nationals now use it in every other sentence, often combining hybrid terms like, hey, pinche way. If you ever seen the movie Tu Mamá También, you'll know what I'm talking about. Calo was originally defined as a Spanish gypsy dialect. But Chicano Calo is different in that it has a combination of many influences: English, Spanish, Spanglish, and even new words that don't exist in Spanish or English. Originally, it was considered to be a low-class dialect used by poor people and was frowned upon by more traditional Spanish speakers. Many historians say the Calo of El Paso and other southwest cities in the late 1930s was probably influenced by wordplay common to residents of the Tepito barrio of Mexico City. And there's even a slang term for residents of Mexico City, DF, which is chilangos. Although Calo may also have roots in Pachuca, Hidalgo, Mexico, where loose-fitting clothing was popular amongst men. It later spread throughout the southwest United States, where it developed further in Los Angeles, where Mexican-American or Chicano Zoot-Suiters developed their own cultural identity, with their hair done in big pompadours and their clothes made very baggy and tailor-made suits. This occurred during the time of World War II, and a lot of people state that there was a shortage on garment materials. And they felt that the Pachucos were wasting a lot of garment material that could be used better in the war. Also, a lot of these Pachucos were draft dodgers, and other people, even Mexican Americans that joined the military, often looked down on them as being degenerates. Now, many of the Pachucos didn't look at it that way. For the Pachucos, the Zoot-Suit became a symbol of cultural pride. In the face of racism, they were confronted with on almost a daily basis. For instance, my wife's grandfather told me once that in Pomona, most of the white barbers would not cut Mexicans' hair because all Mexicans have piojos. And did you know in many Chicano communities that Mexican Americans were not allowed to swim in swimming pools except on Wednesdays? Because that was the day when they changed the water. Que gacho. So these young Pachuco men wore their zoot suits defiantly. And women back then weren't supposed to wear pants, since it was seen as a masculine garment. And while many Pachucas incorporated skirts into their outfits, others often ditched them in favor of the baggy pants that the guys wore. So not only were they breaking cultural norms, they were breaking gender norms. And during the Zoot Suit riots of June 1943, the people of Los Angeles, and indeed the entire nation, saw this racism come to a head as Zoot-Suiters often got beat down and disrobed by the mobs while police just looked on. Often also, these Pachucos experience police brutality. If you ever seen the play or the movie Zoot-Suit, it talks a lot more about this culture. Like I said, these individuals spoke their own language. It was basically a cool jive of half English, half Spanish rhythms and their own terms that they came up with. Calo evolved over the decades and underwent much change during the Chicano movement of the 1960s as Raza began entering U.S. universities and became exposed to the counterculture movement. These were often expressed in literature, poetry, paintings, as well as street graffiti. The intro song to this video was Hey Pachuco by the Royal Crown Review. The big band sound of Cherry Poppin' Daddies also often plays music in the old Pachuco style. The Pachuco Hop was a very popular song and was released by Chuck Higgins, who grew up in the Aliso Village barrio on the east side of Los Angeles. Previous generations often influenced subsequent generations. My father-in-law played in a popular East LA band for many years during the 1950s up until about the year 2000, when his band were all viejitos. And my uncle-in-law played in many bands in the greater Los Angeles area who dressed in zoot suits and played traditional Chicano oldies. He performed on the same stage as legendary artists El Chicano, Malo, and Tierra, who often adorned zoot suits, and who played for his daughter's wedding as a special favor. I first recall seeing Calo used in the mainstream media when the character of Cheech, played by actor Cheech Marin, often used Calo during his movies in the 1970s, such as Up in Smoke. Later, other media venues also brought Calo to the attention to both Chicanos and non-Chicanos, such as The George Lopez Show, The Latin Kings of Comedy, films like American Me, Blood In, Blood Out, and Mi Vida Loca, Chicano rappers like Frost, and teenager and lowrider magazines. My grandfather was a Pachuco from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, where we still have many relatives today. Here is his brother, my great tío Gabe Morales, in his Pachuco getup. My grandfather also lived in Chicago and took on many of the gangster mannerisms and dialect from guys he met there. Everybody describes my grandma Lucy as being a saint. She was very shy, very kind, and quiet, and nice to everybody. But my grandfather won her over after he won over my great-grandfather, Don Antonio, her father. So she started dressing more like a Pachuca after getting together with my grandpa Gabriel. Unfortunately, he was involved in a homicide of a groom at a wedding where he was the best man. My great tío was intoxicated and said something insulting about the bride at the reception, and the groom started to beat him with a crowbar. My grandfather is said to often have carried a whiskey flask in one coat pocket and a gun in the other. Coming to the aid of his brother-in-law, he shot the groom, who was charged with murder, but pled down to manslaughter and did almost 10 years at the Washington State Penitentiary, where he ran with the Mexican clique called Los Tejanos, being as most of the Mexican Americans in Washington State at that time were from the state of Texas. And, of course, they all spoke Calo. All of this and more details are included in my autobio, The Life and Times of a Vato Loco. Speaking of Vato Loco, that is a term that was often used by me and my homeboys. We'd often greet each other with terms such as, hey, Vato, and the response would be, hey, Loco. Our fathers and uncles would often call each other Vato or Dude. They would also often describe when they saw something crazy as being Loco. We combined this term as our party crew name, Vatos Locos, which was a loose-knit group. You didn't jump into our clique. If we like you, you partied in and were accepted. And if you moved away or joined the military, then we'd have a big going away party for you. So literally you partied out. Now my brother Joe, on the other hand, was in a group that could be classified as a gang. They were called the Pike Street Gang, as Pike Street in downtown Seattle during the 1970s and 80s was their main stomping grounds, where they'd often deal in drugs and later on moved into home invasion robberies and other crimes. His gang was multiracial, but our two groups were not exclusive. All of us in the Vatos Locos and the Pike Street Gang knew each other and often attended the same parties. And the first drive-by shooting involving Hispanic gangs involved these two groups, who had a conflict with some MA and MA associates out of California, which is also in my autobio. I would say that most of us were fairly Americanized and could speak little Spanish, or at least little of what is called Castilian Spanish, the one that is often taught in schools. Most of us grew up in and around the public housing projects and were relatively poor, so we adopted our own vocabulary, probably very much like the Pachucos did, combining Spanish with inner-city black terms as a manner of speaking. We would also often hear dichos, which are rhymes in Spanish that usually have some kind of meaning. Now, there can be dichos in Spanish and also dichos in Calo, or a combination. You may have heard before the saying, ¿Me comprendes, Méndez? Do you understand, Méndez? O te explico, Federico? Or do I explain it to you, Federico, if somebody doesn't quite get what you're saying? Or a rato vato, later dude. Or ¿Qué te pasa, calabaza? What's happening with you, pumpkinhead? You could look up dichos online. There are a lot of them. And like I said, many of them are very funny or have some wisdom in them. But let's cover some of the more common terms of Calo, often used inside and outside of the pintas, or prisons, by pintos, or convicts, as many of them used to be called when I was growing up. You may have heard the term aguitado. That means to be angry or pissed. A toda madre. Let's say you're eating some tortillas at your friend's house, and you might say a toda madre, which means awesome. These taste good, just like mom's. Somebody may say, okay, Bob. Now, if your name is Bob, there may not be a problem there, but it also might be short for baboso, or dumbass. I've often used the term califas in my videos and forget sometimes that not everybody grew up in a Chicano neighborhood or has experience inside prisons. But califas means California. Canton means your pad in your home. But I've also heard out in the yard, one guy tell the other guy, I'm going to head back to the canton, which means his jail cell. Carnal, I use that a lot. Now, carnal just means a brother. Doesn't always mean blood brother, but as in very good friends. But it also means a main member of the Nuestra Familia or Mexican Mafia. A camarada. Camarada can be just a partner, not necessarily a crime partner. But in prison, this often refers to as being a Mexican Mafia associate. Chale, which means hell no, or nel, which I hardly hear anymore, which is an old Pachuco term that basically means no estás loco, you're not crazy, and was often used in the same context as chale. Chanate, which means coffee. Chancles, that's a Pachuco term, and chancleo means a dance. The chante, which is another old Pachuco term, in chanteado would mean that you were married. Chavalas, which means girls, but often is used to describe a male sissy. Let's say the guy doesn't want to fight. Oh, pinche chavala, you're a damn sissy. So that could be fighting terms. Chingon, which means you're a badass dude, or a shot caller, the head vato, and mero mero, the number one guy. Chingao, which is a spin-off word meaning what the fuck. So if you're throwing chingazos, that means you're fighting, as in tirar chingazos, throwing blows. Chiva, which means female goat, but often refers to heroin in the joint. Chota, which means pig, but often refers to the cops. The clica, which basically means clique, but often refers to a gang or subgroup of a larger gang. Condado, which means county, but often describes the county jail. Yeah, I was torcido in the condado. I was locked up in the county jail. Cuete, which means gun. Dedo, I don't hardly hear that anymore, but it used to mean finger, referring to the middle finger, as in, that's dedo, man. That's apt up. Directa is an address, your direction. Ese, which means guy or dude, but often used by sureños, and norteños will often use ene for norteño. Hilero, which means a shank. Firme or firmes, which is solid, something or somebody of reputation. Flicas, which refers to photos, as in, órale pues, send me a flica, Holmes. The guy's asking him to send him a photo. Frajos, which is smokes. Gacho, which means chicken shit, but also can mean to be done shitty or treated badly. Gafas, which are sunglasses or shades. Gavachos, which is whites. I also hear the term sabanas, or sheets. Hoyo, which means hole, but in prison, it means you're going to segregation. It also can refer to a gang, such as El Hoyo Maravilla. Huevos, which literally means eggs, but is slang for testicles. Órale pues, tienes muchos huevos, means you're muy macho. Jaina, which is a girlfriend. Joto, which is homosexual. Pura, which can describe the cops. Leva, which means you're a snitch. When they say you're on the leva, or you guys are a bunch of levas, a bunch of snitches. Los, short for Los Angeles. Some of my videos, some of you have noted that I say the guy is from Los. That just means he's from the LA area, usually because I don't know the exact barrio. Machucar, which means to smash or run over. And a machaca is a popular breakfast meal, which is all smashed up, usually served with smashed beef from leftover birria, eggs, and bell peppers, onions, and chiles. Mayates, which is a black bug, but often refers to African Americans. Menso, which is stupid. A mojado, which means wet, usually referring to wetbacks or Mexican nationals. Mota, which means weed. Que ondas? Onda is a happening. So que ondas is what's happening. Órale. Now, this is a term that has many meanings. It can mean all right, I hear you, right on. That's one of the most common terms in Calo. Pedo, which is kind of disgusting, but it means a fart, but also can mean that there's going to be a big stink or fight. Órale, ¿quieres pedo? You got a problem? You want to fight? A pegada, which means a hit, but in prison speak, that often means doing a mission, being sent out to do a hit by a shot caller to earn your stripes, earn your bones, so to speak, if you want to remain in good standing and still be considered to be an active gang member. Pinche. Pinche in front of anything basically gives it extra emphasis, such as pinche culero, you're a damn asshole. Pinta, which means prison. Pisto, which often refers to beer, or in the joint can refer to pruno, or homemade inmate manufactured alcohol. Pues, which means well, in Calo, often used as a answer or confirmation, such as in órale pues, well, all right then. Putos, which means homosexual. Of course, a puta would be the opposite of that, a female whore. Cubole, as I opened up in this video, often written as QVO, capital Q-VO, which also was a lowrider magazine, is a greeting, such as "What's up? How you been, Mexican?" Rampa is your ride, usually referring to a lowrider, or also a bomba. I still miss my 51 Chevy Bomba, but I had to sell it when I moved to Hawaii. Rifamos. Rifa refers to weed, but rifamos usually means we're the best. Aruca is another name for a girl or your girlfriend. Sapo, which means a frog, but also can be used as "Órale pues, I pulled a sapo on you. I surprised you." Simon, which is in yes, but more of a hell yes. Tapado, which is a hothead, where somebody has a short fuse, a violent temper. Torcido, I mentioned earlier, means you've been locked up in the joint. Trapos. I don't hear too many people use that anymore, but that's an old Pachuco term for clothes. Trucha. I do hear that a lot, and I use that a lot still, as in watch out, beware, as in stay trucha. And huilas. I talked about in my last video on codynamic communications. That is a kite or a written communication, often on lined paper. They'll write so small it'll be 3 lines on one sheet of line paper. These are often used to communicate. Gangs like the Nuestra Familia will send these out as filters. I'll get more into Nuestra Familia and how they generally operate in a video coming up soon. What other terms have you heard that would fall under the category of Calo or Chicano slang? Please put them for us in the comment section. Now, just like in all my videos, I'm not trying to encourage criminal behavior or teach youngsters anything they don't already know or probably will know anyways. Granted, words can be weapons and can lead to actions or repercussions. I'm just trying to educate people about these terms so you don't get caught up or misinterpreted during your communications. I still occasionally teach communication classes and feel it is very important to always remember the context that words are stated. I also have a book coming out soon with my good friend and colleague, Corey Cooper, called The 4 I's: Interviewing, Interrogation, Investigating, and Intelligence in Criminal Justice. That will soon be available on Cognella, which is a college academic printing company. While it does not include a section on Calo, it does have some good tips for people about how to communicate better and get better responses. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. Please stay trucha. Please take care of yourself and your loved ones. For now, this is Gabe Morales signing off. Gangsters, cops, and politicians.